Alright, this is the introduction for part one of my exposition of what I would consider to be my ultimate Fallout game. So, I guess we'll begin with the setup, then the gameplay setting, and then characters, and that'll be the end of part one. Part two, we'll go over gameplay specifics and stuff like that. Character builds, that type of thing. So let's get into it after the cut. So the first thing is I would prefer my ultimate Fallout game would not in fact take place in the Bethesda timeline of Fallout, because Bethesda's Fallout games are, in my opinion, shit. I would instead do a game that takes place after the events of Fallout New Vegas, mostly because there's some interesting things going on, new technology coming out, and society trying to rebuild itself instead of the same shit being redone over and over again, because Bethesda can't be bothered to actually come up with new stories and better stories. So I would basically have it take place on the West Coast, parts of the Pacific, maybe parts of Hawaii and Japan. You would be dealing with NCR trying to essentially expand to the east, to the west. Of course, they're meeting up with difficulties with doing this. There's things like, hey, we have the remnants of the Russian and Chinese fleets trying to still fighting wars. We have rogue AI robots who are manning ships that still basically think the war is still going on. That type of stuff in terms of the setting. Of course, you have different factions that are fighting it out amongst each other, trying to basically determine who's going to hold the keys to the future. That being said, I'm thinking that the overall setting, the overall setup for the game, like the main quest line that starts everything going, is your character, and this is where this game would be very different from every other Fallout game. This is something that the Obsidian developers wanted to do, but Bethesda was, they didn't have the time, so, to do it in New Vegas, but, not Bethesda, the Obsidian developers wanted to do, but they just didn't have the time to do it. I think it would be cool to, instead of you just being a normal human being, you could basically play as one of 5 different types of characters, and then you could essentially, on top of that, delineate yourselves into sub categories. So you can be a super mutant. You can be a super mutant generation 1 through 3, or a nightkin. Generation 1 super mutants are basically like kind of like Neil from Fallout 2 and Fallout New Vegas. They're basically Ubermen. When you think of a super mutant, like the really powerful, stronger, more intelligent. They're basically the better humanity. Only downside is that they are neutered. They can't reproduce. In order to create new super mutants, you have to dump people in vats of this FEV virus stuff. Gen 2 super mutants are dumber than Gen 1 and altogether weaker. If a Gen 1 super mutant's like, I don't know, if you gave them a 10 out of 10 score, Gen 2s are 8 out of 10. Gen 3s are what you see in Fallout 4. They're super mutants who are dumb. Also in New Vegas, they're dumb. If I had to categorize them, if a normal mutant is like if the Gen 2s are 8 out of 10, Gen 3s are 3 or 2 out of 10. And they continue to mutate over time. That's why you have those behemoth mutants that are just all fucked up. Basically, they're unstable mutations, which is not good for them because they die horrifically as time goes on. Now, the cool thing about this is that, you know, if you chose to start the game as a super mutant, you would have various, you know, pluses and minuses. Like, as a super mutant, whether you're one of the Gens 1 through 3s or a Nightkin, you would have certain special abilities. Like, Nightkin can turn invisible, and, you know, super mutants have really good, Gen 1 super mutants have really good stats, but they gain experience at a slower rate. Gen 2 has decent stat growth, but they still have pretty good stats, but not as good as Gen 1s, but they gain experience a little bit faster than a Gen 1. Gen 3s have shitty stats except for their physical strength, but they level up relatively quickly. But there's a chance that they'll gain a harmful, unstable mutation, like taking more damage from fire attacks, shit like that. So basically, what I'm thinking is, you know, that would be a nice little caveat. Like, let's say, yeah, you're a super mutant, you choose to start the game as a super mutant, but caveat is, you can't go, until your reputation gets to a certain point, you can't go in certain settlements. Certain people will try to kill you on sight. Like, if you meet Brotherhood of Steel, they'll try to kill you on sight. They don't give a shit, you know. And other groups like the Brotherhood of Steel, who are very anti-super mutant, very racist, they'll try to kill you on sight. You know, shoot on sight type shit. I think that would be a really cool gameplay concept. You know, so that's one starter, major starter group, and then subsets of that group. You could be a ghoul. You could be a normal ghoul, a feral ghoul, or a glowing one. And, you know, well, not feral ghoul. You could be a normal ghoul or a glowing one. A glowing one, you can actually heal yourself by being in radioactive areas. But people aren't going to want to be around you, and if you have NPC companions who are not ghouls around you, they can die. They can become irradiated and die if they're around you, if they aren't wearing protective suits. And as a glowing ghoul, you actually have to wear a protective suit in order to go into civilized areas that basically covers your entire body, because you can kill people just by being near them. You could be a human. You could actually choose your origin as a human, so you could choose to be a Native American. You could choose to be a gang member, like of the Great Khans or the Kings, shit like that. You know, and these things could basically give you a certain edge in certain types of combat, shit like that. Next, like your origin basically gives you a predetermined relationship with certain factions in game. Next, let's see, you could be a cyborg, which is cool, or you could be a synth or a robot. So that's 6 different characters you could be in the beginning of this game. So with that being said, let's move on to the second thing, which is the second topic, which is, you know, we went over gameplay setting. Now we'll go over the setting. Now we'll go over gameplay hook after the cut. So, you know, Fallout games typically have some type of gameplay hook. The first Fallout basically was a post-apocalyptic action RPG. Fallout 2 was more of said post-apocalyptic action RPG with all types of different things you could do. The third game was in 3D. New Vegas was a return to form, but in the same engine as the 3D game, but with better writing, better characterization, more in-depth conceptualization. Fallout 4 was the settlement system, but everything else sucked. And I would say the gunplay was pretty good, but Fallout was never really about the gunplay. Even back in the day, it was never like if you had the stats where you could talk yourself out of a conflict, it was much better than or finding alternate ways to get in and out of a situation without having to pull your gun out and shoot somebody. It was better that way. As a matter of fact, Fallout 2, you could beat the final boss of that game just by talking to him. if your stats were high enough, which is fucking amazing. But that's neither here nor there. So the gameplay hook, I would say, in my ultimate Fallout game would basically be, I encapsulate the settings being on the West Coast, where you can go into the Pacific, to Hawaii, Japan, parts of China and Russia. I think it would be really cool to have a Fallout game that essentially, the big hook would be, okay, you need to build boats. You could bring back the settlement system, but the settlement system in Fallout 4 kind of sucked. It was like Bethesda spent time that could have been spent making a better story, having more interesting characters, and just put it all into, well, people can build shit, which served no purpose for the game except for like 2 or 3 missions. But in this game, I think you basically, like, the whole point, the dichotomy in Fallout, in my ultimate Fallout game, would be science being used to hurt society, which is, the Great War, and science being used to save society, which is you basically doing what you need to do in order to bring back civilization. This is by reclaiming old technology, bringing it back, that type of shit. I think that would be the gameplay hook. That would be the, oh my god, this definitely needs to be done. Do I think this could work? Yes. Yes, I do. Do I think it's perfect? No. No, I do not. But I do think you could totally have this aspect of gameplay work perfectly in as a hook, as a gameplay hook. Could you imagine you may be starting out with a little shitty boat that only has a certain amount of range. This way, you're kind of forced to do a certain amount of side quests in an area and advance the main quest to a certain point. But then, you get a better engine. So now, you can either add that to your shitty little boat, which will make it really fragile, but it'll be fast, or you can build a new boat. So then you have to get involved with various story and side quests in order to get better pieces to build a better boat. Maybe you can't actually build this boat by yourself. Maybe you'll have to actually build up some settlements and then wait for them to make the parts that you need to make shit better. So that way the settlement system actually works, because you actually have to, like, there's tangible results to you using this concept, not just, hey, I have some place to sleep. So I'll get to the overall conclusion after the cut and tell you what's coming up for part 2. So in this first part, we covered the setting and the gameplay hook. The next part, I'll go over what I think what would be an interesting story for me for a Fallout game, some more in-depth stuff like who's the overall villain, what's the motivation, all that type of stuff. Because it's an RPG and you need that type of stuff. Oh, and I'll also go over companions you could have, that type of thing. So this is coming out on the 14th of April. Yes, April. Part 2 will probably come out on the on the Thursday or Friday. Look forward to that. Remember, rate, comment, share, subscribe. If you have any comments or questions about Fallout, that'd be good. I wouldn't mind having a discussion about the franchise with you. Fallout New Vegas is my favorite Fallout game. This is footage from Fallout New Vegas. It is my favorite Fallout game. But, you know, to each his own. Everyone has their own little proclivities and pet peeves and eccentricities and things that they like and don't like. So, with that being said, rate, comment, share, subscribe. We have a podcast, the BS Busters Funcast, this Wednesday. And Saturday, this Wednesday at 7:30 p.m. to 9 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And Saturday, we will be having the BS Busters Newscast, 7:30 p.m. to 9 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So with that being said, rate, comment, share, subscribe, enjoy, all that fun jazz, peace, and good day.